What if I told you that the night before my college graduation from Stanford University, my own family booked me into a roadside motel that smelled like defeat and broken dreams, while they celebrated in a downtown luxury suite? And what if I told you that by the next evening, everything I thought I knew about family, success, and my own worth had completely shattered and rebuilt itself? This isn't just a story about graduation. This is the story of how one ceremony exposed 22 years of being invisible in my own family, and how sometimes the people who should see you first are the very last ones to notice you've been changing the world. Picture this moment with me. You're 22 years old. You've just completed 4 grueling years at one of the world's most prestigious universities. Your fingers are cramped from coding, your eyes are strained from research, and your heart is full of dreams that feel bigger than the Silicon Valley skyline. You're expecting something: recognition, celebration, maybe even pride. Instead, you get an email. Not "Congratulations, sweetheart," not "We're so proud of you," not even "We love you." Just a motel reservation confirmation that feels like a digital slap across the face. "Joanne, we've arranged your lodging for graduation weekend. Mark and Leslie will be with us at the downtown suite." The limo picks them up at 9:15 a.m. Your check-in confirmation is attached. That was it. No warmth, no celebration, no acknowledgement that I was about to achieve something that should have made them burst with pride. Just cold, calculated logistics. That spelled out exactly where I ranked in the family hierarchy. Let me paint you a picture of Mark, my older brother. The golden child, the one who checked every single box my parents, Richard and Linda Whitaker, knew how to celebrate. Harvard Law, junior partner at a prestigious Boston firm by 28. Engaged to Leslie, a surgeon's daughter who looked perfect in Christmas photos and never challenged anyone's expectations. Mark was their triumph. Clean success, traditional path, easy to brag about at dinner parties and PTA meetings. When friends asked about their children, Mark's story rolled off their tongues like a well-rehearsed speech. And me? I was their question mark. Their puzzle piece that didn't fit the picture they'd been trying to create for 22 years. Here's where my story takes a turn that my parents never saw coming. Sophomore year, I made a decision that sent shockwaves through our perfectly manicured family dinners. I left pre-law, not for another respectable major like business or medicine. No, I dove headfirst into computational systems and applied business, a combination that made my father's eye twitch and my mother change the subject when her book club asked about my studies, while Mark was memorizing case law and networking. At law firm Mixers, I was building AI models that could revolutionize education. I was running pilots through nonprofit incubators, creating systems that could bring cutting-edge technology to communities that had been left behind by the digital revolution. But my father saw freelance tech dabbling. He looked at my resume for exactly 15 seconds, I counted, and delivered his verdict with the casual cruelty that only family can master. Looks unfocused. That word, unfocused, became the lens through which they viewed everything I did. Every late night I spent coding was staying up too late with computers. Every meeting with education officials was another one of Joanne's projects. Every breakthrough was diminished, dismissed, or simply ignored. So the motel reservation didn't shock me, but it still cut deep, like a paper cut that seems small, until you realize it's bleeding more than you expected. I checked into that motel late, after they'd already settled into their suite. The carpet reeked of industrial Lysol trying to mask decades of cigarette smoke and disappointment. The clerk, a tired-looking woman in her 50s, asked if I was in town for a wedding. No, I said, standing there with my graduation robe in a plastic bag, wondering if anyone would even notice when they called my name tomorrow. But here's what my family didn't know. While they were upstairs in their luxury suite, toasting Mark's latest promotion with champagne and discussing summer vacation plans, I was quietly changing lives. I opened my laptop and checked the dashboard for something called the Athena Project. 6 new schools had just signed on to begin AI learning modules in underserved districts across the country. Test scores were rising in ways that made administrators question their data. Teachers were requesting program extensions, begging for more resources, more time, more support. And there in my inbox was a note that made every dismissive comment from my family fade into background noise. "Miss Whitaker, my name is Maya. I'm in 8th grade in Ohio. Before your program came to our school, I thought computers were just for games and social media. Yesterday, I built my first learning algorithm. It's not perfect, but it works. I never thought I could build something smart. Thank you for showing me that I could. This was the work I'd stopped mentioning at family dinners. The work that had become invisible to them because it didn't fit their definition of success. They knew Mark's GPA by heart. They posted about his promotions on social media with proud parent captions. But they had no idea how I was affording rent in one of the most expensive areas in the country. They didn't know I'd been invited to speak at a Department of Education roundtable about the future of AI in public education. They didn't know that a board of advisors met with me every other Friday to discuss national expansion plans that could reach millions of students. I'd stopped trying to tell them. Somewhere along the way, between the eye rolls and the subject changes and the subtle suggestions that I should think about something more stable, I just gave up trying to make them see me. Then, just past 7 p.m., she showed up. My grandmother, Evelyn Whitaker, wrapped in that same gray wool coat she'd worn since I was in high school. She never knocked like a stranger, just tapped once and let herself in, like she owned every room she entered. I brought pie, she said, carrying a small bakery box and something else, a thick navy scrapbook, frayed with time and stuffed with memories. She sat on the edge of that motel bed like we were back in her Michigan farmhouse, where I used to spend summers building contraptions out of soup cans and spare wire, where my unfocused mind was celebrated instead of criticized. I thought I'd see you before tomorrow, she said, her voice carrying the weight of decades. Your mother told me you'd be busy, but I figured a girl could make time for her grandmother, especially when that girl is about to graduate at the top of her class. Then she opened that scrapbook, and my world shifted. Inside were newspaper clippings from local papers I'd forgotten existed, printed emails from teachers and program directors, a flyer from the robotics club I'd started at 14, photos of science fairs and invention competitions my parents had been too busy to attend. You think I wasn't watching? She said softly, her weathered fingers tracing the edges of a photo. Every time they rolled their eyes at your projects, I kept these. Every time they dismissed your dreams, I documented them. She turned a page, and there it was, a photo of me at 17, holding a state award for innovation in educational technology. I remembered that day clearly. My parents had a prior commitment, something about Mark's graduation from law school orientation. Evelyn had driven me 5 hours there and 5 hours back, singing off-key Beatles songs and stopping for ice cream. On the way home, they never knew where to place you, she continued, her voice gentle but firm. Mark was easy. Shiny resume, steady girlfriend, polished shoes. But you were too quiet to fit in their frame, too complex for their simple story. Then she pulled out an envelope, not sealed, just folded carefully, like it contained something precious. I made an investment in you a few years ago, she said. Took it out of your grandfather's savings account. You told me not to, but I did it anyway. You said you'd pay me back someday. Baby girl, you already have. Inside was a memo, addressed to the Dean of Academic Affairs. Donor details for an upcoming announcement. My breath caught in my throat as I read the numbers, the commitment, the scope of what she'd done. She'd made me the lead beneficiary. No, the lead donor for Stanford's new College of Applied Futures. You give that to him tomorrow before the ceremony, she said, pressing the envelope into my hands. Tell him the truth, that it wasn't just you. It was all those kids you've been teaching, all those teachers you've been training, all those communities you've been reaching. That's who the spotlight's really for. Before she left, she kissed my cheek with lips that smelled like peppermint and wisdom and said, wear something with pockets tomorrow. You'll want your hands free when the applause starts. I left the motel early, before the sun had fully claimed the sky. I pressed my graduation robe with steam from the tiny shower, trying to smooth out the wrinkles that seemed to mirror the chaos in my heart. I wore an old navy dress I'd bought on clearance 2 years ago, simple, understated, mine. I didn't want to wear someone else's story that day. On campus, families clustered under white tents like well-dressed tribes claiming territory. Cameras clicked constantly. Fathers pointed at buildings like they'd once walked those halls themselves. Mothers fussed over graduation caps and smoothed non-existent wrinkles from gowns. I kept my head down, walking past the flower stands and coffee carts, past the proud parents and excited siblings, feeling like a ghost at my own celebration. Then I saw them, my family. Richard adjusting Mark's cufflinks with the precision of a man who understood the importance of appearance. Linda fussing over Leslie's hair, making sure every strand was perfect for the photos they'd post later. Mark standing tall, looking exactly how they'd always wanted him to look, polished, framed, easy to understand and easier to brag about. I stayed behind a group of students, watching from across the lawn like an observer studying a species she didn't quite belong to. They didn't see me, or if they did, they didn't recognize me. Just another graduate in a sea of black robes and mortarboards. I should have been used to that invisibility by now. But today, it felt different. Today, I wasn't waiting for something to go wrong. I was waiting for something to begin. The ceremony began with all the pomp and circumstance you'd expect from Stanford. Name after name was called. Polite applause followed each graduate like a gentle wave. I sat in my assigned seat, hands folded, shoulders relaxed for the first time in months. Then Dean Weller stepped back to the podium after the regular graduations. He cleared his throat, and the crowd of thousands quieted to an almost reverential silence. Before we conclude today's ceremony, he began, his voice carrying across the lawn, we'd like to take a moment to recognize a contribution made not just to this campus, but far beyond its gates. I felt the envelope against my side, Evelyn's words echoing in my mind. Tell him the truth. Each year, we witness remarkable accomplishments from our graduating class, Dean Weller continued. But once in a while, one of our own works so quietly, so persistently, that the scope of their impact escapes our notice until we finally take the time to look. The shift in energy was palpable. My parents sat up straighter. Linda lowered her phone. Even Richard, who'd barely looked up from his own phone since the ceremony started, raised his chin with sudden attention. This year, Stanford University is proud to honor Joanne Whitaker, class of 2025, whose AI education initiative, the Athena Project, has reached over 28,000 students across the country in underfunded public schools. Silence. Then a wave of quiet murmurs rippled through the audience like wind through wheat. A slideshow began on the massive screen behind him. Photos of after-school classrooms in West Virginia, where students who'd never seen a computer before were building basic robots. A robotics lab in rural Montana, where teenage girls in oversized safety goggles held microcontrollers like they were precious gems. A night program for adult learners in Queens, where parents learned alongside their children through her nonprofit organization. Dean Weller continued. Joanne has quietly partnered with over 60 school districts nationwide. She has designed accessible AI curriculum specifically for communities often left out of the technology conversation. She has trained hundreds of public school teachers, established mentorship programs, and created a replicable model that is now being adopted in 4 other countries. The air around me changed. I could feel eyes turning toward me, but I didn't look at my family. Not yet. This moment was bigger than their recognition. This moment was about every student who'd ever felt invisible, every teacher who'd ever felt unsupported, every community that had been overlooked. And earlier this spring, Dean Weller announced, Joanne became the anonymous lead donor for our new College of Applied Futures. That new wing opening next fall will bear her name, ensuring that future generations of students will have access to the same innovative, inclusive education she's been providing to underserved communities. The applause began like a distant storm and built to thunder. I stood slowly, not from instinct or training, but from choice, from the knowledge that this moment belonged to every invisible person who'd ever doubted their worth. They waited for me outside the reception tent, looking like people who'd just watched their understanding of reality crumble and rebuild itself. Richard spoke first, his voice carrying the weight of years of missed opportunities. I didn't realize, he began, but the words fell flat against the magnitude of what he'd just learned. You didn't ask, I replied, not with anger, but with the quiet certainty of someone who'd finally found her voice. Linda stepped forward, her perfectly composed facade cracking slightly. Joanne, why wouldn't you tell us? We would have. Would you? I asked, meeting her eyes directly. Would you have celebrated AI education for underserved communities? Would you have been proud of work that couldn't be summarized in a cocktail party conversation? Mark crossed his arms, and for a moment, I saw the little boy who'd always needed to be the center of attention. So what is this? He asked. Some kind of speech? Some elaborate point you needed to prove? I almost smiled then, almost laughed, at the beautiful irony of it all. No, Mark, the point proved itself. I never needed to prove anything to you. I was just waiting for you to notice what I'd been building all along. They stood there, still dressed for someone else's photo opportunity, looking like actors who'd forgotten their lines. Richard cleared his throat, the sound cutting through the tension. All this time, he said slowly, we just thought you were struggling to figure it out. We thought you needed guidance, direction. I was figuring it out, I said, my voice steady, but not in the way you assumed. I was figuring out how to create something meaningful, how to use technology to level playing fields instead of widening gaps, how to make education accessible to kids who looked like me but didn't have my advantages. There was a pause then. That stretch of empty air where no one knows what to say because the version of you they'd carried in their heads for 22 years no longer fits the person standing in front of them. Linda's voice softened, and for the first time in years, I heard genuine emotion break through her practiced composure. We're proud of you, Joanne. We're so proud. She meant it. I could hear the sincerity, the regret, the love she'd never quite known how to express. But I also heard everything she didn't say, the rearranging of narratives that was already happening. In her mind, the sudden search for new stories to tell their friends, the mental editing of family history. You're proud of me now, I said gently. Now that I've made something you can understand. Now that there's a building with my name on it and an audience that applauded. We just didn't see it, Richard said, and his voice carried a weight I'd never heard before. You didn't look, I replied. There's a difference. That stopped him. Just for a breath, just for a moment, but I saw it land. I saw 22 years of assumptions crumble in his eyes. I left them there in that awkward bubble of realization and drove to the lake house. The same one from my childhood summers. The one where I'd built my first robot out of Evelyn's kitchen supplies. The same one they'd had to sell when I was 16 because of financial difficulties. The same one I'd quietly bought back 3 years ago when it went into foreclosure, using the first profits from the Athena project. The same one they'd never bothered to ask about. By 5 p.m., they arrived. Not my family. The girls. The real celebration. 8th graders from Flint who'd driven 4 hours with their parents to be here. A 10th grader from Detroit who'd spent the semester building her own speech synthesis module. Teachers who'd become mentors, volunteers who'd become friends. My program manager Aaron who'd flown in from Seattle. We ate barbecue under string lights on the back porch, the same porch where I'd once dreamed of changing the world. One of the girls, barely 13, showed me her latest prototype, a small robot that followed voice commands and lit up different colors when it heard positive reinforcement. It likes encouragement, she explained, her eyes bright with pride and possibility. That makes 2 of us, I said and meant it. Later, as the sun set over the lake, I left a note at my family's hotel dinner. PM. The lake house. No address included. If they wanted to come, they'd remember where it was. At 6:30, headlights turned off the main road and into the driveway. They came, not saying much, looking uncertain and out of place, but they came. As Mark parked, I walked over and said quietly, pull the car around back. The girls leave their science fair boards out front to dry. They'll be here again tomorrow for our workshop. He blinked, processing this instruction that implied a world he'd never known existed. I didn't wait for an answer. Behind me, I heard Evelyn's voice, patient and knowing, speaking to my parents. You didn't lose her. You just weren't looking in the right places. The dinner was awkward at first. My parents trying to make conversation with teenagers who spoke in code and algorithms. Mark asking careful questions about AI applications in legal research. But gradually, something shifted. One of the girls pulled out her phone and showed them a video call from Maya in Ohio, the same girl who'd sent me that email months ago. She was holding an acceptance letter to MIT, her face glowing with possibility. Miss Whitaker changed my life, she said to my parents through the screen. She made me believe I could build smart things. She made me believe I was smart enough to build them. I watched my parents' faces as they began to understand. This wasn't just about me. This was about generations of kids who'd been overlooked, underestimated, written off. Kids who looked like me, who thought differently like me, who needed someone to believe in them the way Evelyn had always believed in me. Later, as we cleaned up, Linda pulled me aside. I don't understand, she said. How did you afford all this? The house, the nonprofit, the donation to Stanford? The Athena project is profitable, I explained. We license our curriculum to school districts, provide training services, and consult on educational technology implementation. But more than that, we've created something sustainable, something that grows stronger by helping others grow stronger. Richard was quiet for a long time, staring out at the lake where I'd once caught fireflies and dreamed impossible dreams. Finally, he spoke. I owe you an apology, he said. More than one. I spent so many years trying to make you fit into my idea of success that I missed watching you create your own definition of it. I don't need your apology, I said, and his face fell slightly. I need you to see me, really see me. Not the version of me you thought you wanted, but the person I actually am. I'm looking now, he said quietly. I'm finally looking. Here's what I learned that day. Sometimes the people who should see you first are the last ones to notice you've been there all along. Sometimes you have to build your own stage, create your own spotlight, and trust that the right audience will find you when you're ready for them. The Athena Project now operates in 12 countries. We've trained over 2,000 teachers and reached more than 50,000 students. That little girl Maya from Ohio, she's now in her sophomore year at MIT, studying computer science and artificial intelligence. She sends me updates on her projects, and every email ends the same way. Thank you for showing me I could build smart things. We've opened 3 permanent learning centers in underserved communities. We've created scholarship funds for students who want to pursue STEM education. We've built partnerships with tech companies that prioritize inclusive hiring practices. But the most important thing we've built is hope. Hope for kids who thought technology wasn't for them. Hope for communities that had been digitally redlined. Hope for a future where innovation comes from every neighborhood, every background, every story. My family and I, we're still figuring it out, but they're looking now, really looking. Mark volunteers with our legal clinic, helping families navigate educational rights. Linda started a fundraising committee for our scholarship fund. Richard keeps a folder on his desk of every article written about the Athena Project. And Evelyn, she's still keeping that scrapbook, still documenting every milestone, every achievement, every moment of recognition. But now she's not the only one paying attention. If you're watching this and you feel unseen, unheard, or undervalued by the people who should champion you most, remember this. Your worth isn't determined by their recognition. Your impact isn't measured by their applause. And your story doesn't need their approval to be extraordinary. Sometimes being invisible isn't about being small. Sometimes it's about being so far ahead, so focused on the work that matters, that others haven't caught up to where you're looking yet. Build your own stage. Create your own definition of success. Trust that the right audience will find you when you're ready for them. And when they finally do, when they finally see what you've been creating all along, you'll realize you didn't need their validation to succeed. You just needed their attention to help them understand what success actually looks like. Find your Evelyn. Be someone else's Evelyn. Look for the invisible people in your life, the ones building something meaningful in the shadows, the ones who don't fit traditional molds, the ones who might be changing the world while everyone else is looking the other way. And remember, sometimes the most powerful moment isn't when they start seeing you. It's when you realize you never needed them to look. You just needed to keep building, keep creating, keep believing in the work itself. The work matters, especially when it feels invisible, especially when you're the only one who believes in it, especially then. Thanks for watching this story. If it resonated with you, if it reminded you of your own invisible moments or inspired you to keep building something meaningful, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Hit that subscribe button if you want more stories about finding your own path, building work that matters, and creating impact that changes lives. The algorithm might not see you, but I do. Drop a comment below. Have you ever felt invisible in your own family? What did you do about it? What are you building that others don't see yet? I read every single comment, and I want to hear your story. And if you know someone who's building something amazing in the shadows, someone who feels unseen or undervalued, share this video with them. Let them know they're not alone in this work. Let them know their invisible impact matters. I'll see you in the next one. Keep building, keep believing, keep looking for the invisible people who are changing the world. One project, one student, one dream at a time.